She was crowned a queen at 16. Her husband was dead within the year. Accused of murder, exiled by the Pope, and hunted by kings, Joanna of Naples didn't flee. She sharpened her crown into a weapon. This is the story of a girl who became a monster to survive. A monster that began as innocent and transformed into a shadow all of Europe would cower from. Joanna of Anjou had not been raised for peace. From the moment she was born into the blood-soaked ambitions of Neapolitan nobility, her fate was political. Her father died young. Her mother faded into obscurity. And so Joanna became an orphaned heir surrounded by wolves, with a throne barely held together by the threads of papal authority and family intrigue. In 1343, King Robert of Naples died, and the papal court in Avignon confirmed Joanna as queen. Not queen consort, queen, ruling in her own right. A child sovereign in a court full of bitter old men with swords behind their backs and poison in their prayers. Joanna had little time to mourn. She was married almost immediately to Andrew of Hungary, her cousin and political tether to the powerful house of Arpad. It was a match not of love, but of strategy, meant to fuse Naples and Hungary into a single, stable dynasty. But Andrew was not her equal. Not in wit, not in temperament, and certainly not in politics. Andrew was foreign, brash, and detested by the Neapolitan elite. He saw himself as king. Joanna saw him as a liability. And while she smiled in public, behind the curtains, she began to understand the game she was being forced to play. The Neapolitan court became a pressure cooker of faction, paranoia, and quiet rebellion. Nobles whispered that Andrew was too aggressive, too crude for the throne. Joanna, meanwhile, began cultivating allies. She was no longer a frightened child queen. She was learning, absorbing the way influence moved, watching which men truly held power, and noting how easily they bled. Then came the moment that changed everything. In 1345, Andrew was found hanging from a trellis outside his bedroom. The details were brutal. Strangled, beaten, stabbed. Murdered by a mob of assassins, while guards mysteriously vanished from their posts. The kingdom gasped. The Pope demanded justice. Hungary screamed for vengeance. And Joanna, barely 17, said nothing. She claimed innocence. She wept when expected. But she did not launch an inquisition. She did not seek the killers. She didn't have to. Because by removing Andrew, her path had been cleared, and she wasn't going to let anyone block it again. Her silence was her first weapon. Her refusal to bow to panic, to reaction, or to grief made her enemies fear her. Whether she ordered Andrew's death or merely allowed it, she had crossed an invisible line. Joanna was no longer just a queen. She was now a survivor. The backlash came swiftly. Hungary declared her a murderess. Her reputation across Europe curdled into scandal. Pope Clement VI summoned her to Avignon to explain herself, demanding both her political loyalty and moral defense. Most would have crumbled, but she did not. She appeared before the papal court not as a penitent child, but as a sovereign woman, dignified, controlled. She denied all involvement in Andrew's death and offered documents and testimony to support her claim. She even gained papal forgiveness and secured his blessing for her second marriage. To Louis of Taranto, a nobleman far more aligned with her interests. Unlike Andrew, Louis would be king only by her side, not above her. Joanna returned to Naples emboldened. The whispers had not broken her, and the death of her husband had not ended her reign. If anything, it had solidified her rule. Her enemies had underestimated her resolve, and she would never give them the chance again. But the world was not finished testing her. In 1348, the Black Death struck Naples with relentless fury. Streets choked with corpses, trade collapsed, entire noble houses vanished. As the kingdom reeled, Joanna again held her court together, not with warmth, but with control. She rationed supplies, enforced curfews, executed thieves, and quelled uprisings before they could take root. Her compassion had limits. Her authority did not. Meanwhile, Hungary was not finished. Louis I of Hungary, Andrew's brother, used the plague as a distraction to invade Naples and claim revenge. He painted Joanna as the Black Queen, unholy, murderous, undeserving of the crown. His army stormed the south, and Joanna was forced to flee to Provence. But even exile didn't break her. She regrouped. She appealed again to the papacy. And when Louis withdrew his forces, unable to hold the kingdom amidst the devastation, Joanna returned. Naples was bruised and bleeding, but she would rule it again. And this time, there would be no innocence left. Her second husband died shortly after reclaiming Naples. She did not mourn long. In the years that followed, Joanna would remarry twice more, each union a chess move, each husband a pawn. She had learned that love was for fools, loyalty was currency, and power was the only thing that lasted. She had entered the world as a girl surrounded by power-hungry men. Now, she was the one they feared, not because she screamed, but because she didn't have to. Joanna ruled with grace, but beneath it, there was a blade. By the end of the 1350s, she had survived betrayal, invasion, plague, and scandal. Her crown was no longer inherited. It was earned, in blood, silence, and steel. And the girl who had once wept behind palace curtains was gone. In her place stood a queen who had buried every weakness. A queen who had learned that, in a world of men, mercy was just another word for prey. By the 1360s, Joanna of Naples was no longer merely enduring history, she was shaping it. She had survived plague, invasion, and 2 dead husbands. But power, she'd learned, didn't just come from enduring. It came from mastering the very forces that tried to destroy her. And she had grown into a ruler who no longer hesitated. Every alliance was calculated, every gesture intentional. Her rule became a performance of grace, cloaked in ruthless precision. Now in her 30s, Joanna reigned from the Castel Nuovo with authority that few dared question. The court bowed not only to her crown, but to her sharp intelligence, her unshakable resolve, and her capacity for subtle, merciless retaliation. She had built a network of spies and informants. Letters vanished, enemies disappeared. No dagger ever pointed at her heart that she hadn't already seen coming. She did not issue mass purges. She didn't need to. Her message was always clear. Oppose her, and you will bleed quietly. Still, in the eyes of many, she remained a woman in a man's role. Popes and kings continued to test her strength through veiled threats and false alliances. And Joanna, patient as ever, kept her blade hidden beneath velvet gloves. Her third marriage, to James IV of Majorca, was not born of affection, but of strategy. James, a dethroned monarch, was desperate and pliable, exactly what Joanna wanted. She offered him her hand and a crown. In return, he offered political obedience. But when James began asserting himself too boldly at court, Joanna stripped him of authority and imprisoned him in his own palace chambers. He died shortly thereafter, mentally broken and powerless. To Joanna, it was not cruelty. It was necessity. The queen could not afford sentiment. She ruled a kingdom perpetually balancing on the edge of war, internal and external. feuding barons, papal interference, the ever-present Hungarian claim. To survive meant not just reacting, but anticipating. She learned to think in years, not weeks. She rewarded loyalty, but never twice. And when she spoke, her words were like polished glass, beautiful, clear, and capable of cutting through anyone who mistook her for gentle. Then came the Church. By the late 1370s, the papacy was spiraling into one of its greatest crises, the Western Schism. Two popes now claimed legitimacy, Urban VI in Rome and Clement VII in Avignon. Europe split down the middle. Kings, emperors, and cardinals chose sides. Joanna knew neutrality was death. She backed Clement VII, the Avignon Pope. It was a dangerous move, but one she believed strategically sound. Clement had French support. He had the traditional Neapolitan alliance. And, most importantly, he owed her for years of loyalty. But Urban VI would not be ignored. In retaliation, he excommunicated Joanna and declared her deposed, naming her distant cousin Charles of Durazzo as the true ruler of Naples. Charles, hungering for power and armed with papal legitimacy, launched a campaign to seize the kingdom. And once again, Joanna faced invasion. But this time, the threat wasn't foreign. Charles was Neapolitan. He knew her court, her streets, her people. His war was not conquest, it was theft. Joanna, nearly 50 now, summoned her allies. She negotiated with France, called on Provence, and armed her soldiers. But she no longer had the advantage of youth. Her enemies were younger, bolder. The tide was turning. Charles laid siege to Naples in 1381. Joanna's defenses cracked, and her generals betrayed her. Her city fell. She fled to Castel dell'Ovo, the fortress on the bay. But she was not naive. She knew it was only a matter of time. When Charles's forces surrounded her, she offered no plea, no surrender speech. She simply requested that her execution be carried out without spectacle. No crowd, no public cruelty, just an end befitting a queen. And in May 1382, Joanna of Naples was strangled with a silken cord in a locked chamber. She died as she had lived, silently, strategically, and without begging. To her enemies, she was a murderous queen who betrayed church and crown. To the church, she was a heretic who backed the wrong pope. To misogynists, she was a woman who dared to rule as men did, and worse, succeeded. She brought order where others brought fire. She restored her kingdom again and again, not by force alone, but by outwitting every man who tried to steal her throne. Joanna's rule had lasted nearly 4 decades. That alone was extraordinary, in an age where most female monarchs were meant to serve as pawns, not players. She had outlived kings, popes, and lovers. She had held her throne while war, plague, and papal wrath clawed at her doorstep. And in that time, she became more than just a ruler. She became an institution of survival. By the end, she trusted no one. She allied only when it served her. She forgave sparingly and never forgot. She had once been a girl who loved. Her first marriage had been tender, even sweet. But by her final years, love was a currency she refused to spend. Her third husband ended up imprisoned. Her fourth was chosen for utility, not companionship. Children were never born or never survived. Another mystery history never solved. Some said she sacrificed motherhood for power. Others believed fate denied her an heir out of fear of what she might create. Without an heir, her death left a vacuum. Charles III took her crown, but not her legacy. He ruled for only 3 more years before being assassinated, another bloody link in the chain of Neapolitan succession. Naples would spiral into chaos. and eventually Joanna's kingdom would fall under the control of foreign powers. In Provence, where she once ruled as countess, she was remembered with reverence. Streets still bear her name. In Naples, her name evokes both scandal and strength. She remains one of the few women of the Middle Ages who ruled as a sovereign in her own right, not as a regent, not as a consort, but as a queen who took and held power with iron precision. Some called her saintly, others called her monstrous, but both agreed on one thing: she was never anyone's pawn. Joanna had taken every insult hurled at her, murderess, heretic, seductress, and wore them like armor. She did not ask for redemption. She did not beg history to love her. She only demanded to be remembered. Joanna of Naples did not simply survive history. She carved herself into it. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and feel free to comment your favorite story for a chance to have it covered.